Well, good morning and good afternoon, everyone. A wonderful pleasure to be with you all today on this beautiful Tuesday, wherever you may be in the world. We've got people literally, as always, dialing in from everywhere across this beautiful Niken world that we're a part of. So great to have you all with us. I sent out, I've got, I think, a very important subject today, again, tapping into our humans being more philosophy here. We need to look at, of course, as we're building our business, getting that balance between strategy and tactics and meaningful daily activities, but also balancing it with our heart and our mind to make sure that our engagement is meaningful, focused, productive, and of course, joyful. We want to be having a wonderful experience as we're building. Now, I asked a question in my invitation that I sent out to the group last night, that I said there is one essential ingredient required for progress. Do you know what it is? I wonder if any of you have given some thoughts. If you wish, by all means, type in the chat element of the Zoom call what you think that one element that is essential for progress needs to be. Be interesting to get some feedback here. As we do. Some couple of comments coming up now straight away. Consistency from Bill. He's saying that is essential for our progress. It certainly is. Belief. Rachel saying belief. Again, a very fundamental element as well. Enthusiasm, determination, dedication, attitude. These are all fantastic responses. Decision and attitude. These are really great. I like that. Courage from Randy Rolfe. Vision from Dan Brock. This is really great responses here. Barb Satterwhite here saying attitude is critical. All of these elements are essential, aren't they? If we want to progress, we need a great mentor. We need to have positive attitude. We need to have vision. We need to have courage, decision, all of these things. Passion. There is one thing that has not been stated. All of these things are great. But one thing has not yet been stated, and it's the subject of our call today. Hunger. I like that one from Dave Johnson. And freedom. We need to have freedom in order to progress. A very philosophical answer there from Anya. I'm going to start by sharing a story, just a brief story. And this will really highlight what I think is essential. I've put here the question, which plant would you rather be? A man by the name of Marvin J. Ashton, back in 1979, shared a really an ordinary experience, but with a very insightful perspective. He said, when a choice plant became root-bound and began to deteriorate, a young friend of ours decided to transplant it to a larger container. He said, carefully he lifted the greenery from its small pot and put it into a larger home, trying to disturb the roots and soil as little as possible. He said the novice gardener watched and waited, but to his dismay, the plant still struggled. Our friend expressed his frustration to an experienced gardener who then offered his services. Now listen to the difference between the way the experienced gardener handled it compared to the novice. He said, when the plant was placed in the gardener's hands, he turned the pot upside down, pulled out the plant, shook the soil from its roots, and clipped and pulled all the stragglers from the root system. Replacing the plant into the pot, he vigorously pushed the soil tightly around the plant, and soon the plant took on new life and grew. What an interesting contrast that was between the two different types of replanting that was required for that plant to grow and to progress. How often do you think in life we set our own roots in the soil and become root-bound? We may treat ourselves too gently, perhaps, and defy anyone to disturb the soil or trim back our own root system. Under these circumstances or conditions, we too may struggle to make progress. So, have you figured out what the subject is for today? It is, of course, the need for change. In order for progress to happen, George Bernard Shaw said this, progress is impossible without change. And those who cannot change their minds cannot change anything at all. It's interesting, isn't it? So as we look at our business here today, or as we look at our own lives, our relationships, where we're at in life, because this doesn't just apply to NECAN, it applies to everything, really, doesn't it? If we want to change, if we want our results to be different, be it in business, in relationships, in certain skills or hobbies or virtues that we're trying to develop, personal progress within our own character, we have to be willing to change. Now, it's been said, of course, that there is nothing so unchanging, so inevitable as change itself. The things we see, touch, and feel are always changing, aren't they? In relationships between friends and family, husbands, wives, fathers, sons, brothers and sisters, etc., they are all dynamic, changing relationships. And here's a great thought in regards to change. I've used this picture a couple of times in the past, but we need not feel that we must forever be what we presently are. I'm going to say that again, because to me, this is a very, very important principle. We need not feel that we must forever be what we presently are, and our past never needs determine our future. I'm grateful for that principle. As I look at my own past, as I look at who I am right now, I'm grateful to know that change is a gift and that we can always put into motion the need to do something different, to become something different, if that's what we need to do. So I do believe, though, that in this process of change, in order to progress, there is a tendency for some, in fact, probably for many, to think of change as the enemy. Many of us, I think, are suspect of change and will often fight against it, resist it, perhaps before we've even discovered what the actual effects of change will be. However, I think when change is thought through carefully, I think it can produce the most rewarding and profound experiences in our lives. I'm grateful for some of the uncomfortable changes that I've had to experience personally in order to become a better person. I've heard it said that people aren't willing to change until the pain of the problem becomes greater than the pain of the solution. Of course, we don't want to get to that point, do we? We don't need to wait until the pain of the problem is greater than the pain of the solution before we change. But many of us, I think, instinctively need to wait for that. But let's not. Let's do something about it now and identify what needs to be done differently. Reach out for it and do it. I think we can do that. So I would suggest some questions we could ask ourselves when the need for change or the opportunity to change reaches into our lives, as it always will. I think we need to ask ourselves some questions. When change gets thrust upon us, or when opportunity knocks and presents itself kindly, the questions we need to ask are, where do I need to personally develop? What do I want out of my own life? Where do I want to go? How am I going to get there? I think these types of questions are important for each of us. I like what Dave Johnson's just said here. Change your paradigm and you can change instantly. In fact, quantumly, you can change. It's remarkable. I was watching some Olympic commentary going on the other day, and one of the commentators acknowledged that there was some research done that gave evidence to the fact that on the track or on the race course, wherever it is where the competition is being held, that it was 80% down to their mind and 20% down to all of their other practice and their performance. But their mind was the key ingredient in making a difference in their success and victory when they were racing. And it was interesting, this morning I watched one of the, I think it was the 200 or 400 meter, no, sorry, it was the 200 meter hurdles. And it was raining. And you could see that this rain, this unexpected bad weather, was causing some distress to some of the athletes. And there was a Jamaican athlete who was who I think had been lined up to do pretty well. And they showed his face before the race, and he was shaking his head in frustration at the rain. And then there was a Spanish runner who was beating his chest and nodding. And then it was just interesting to see that the Spanish guy won, and the Jamaican, I think, came in about fifth. And then afterwards they said he lost before he started. And what was the difference? It was his mind. Fascinating that, isn't it? How we can make such a difference there. I like this quote from C.S. Lewis. If you haven't heard, C.S. Lewis, wonderful author. He was the author of The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. And also a prolific religious author as well. And he said this about change. And I like this perspective as well. He said, there is often pain in change. And he explained it in this way. He said, imagine yourself as a living house. God comes in to rebuild that house. At first, perhaps, you can understand what he's doing. He's getting the drains right, stopping the leaks in the roof, and so on. You knew those jobs needed doing, and so you're not surprised. But presently, he starts knocking the house about in a way that hurts abominably. And he does things that just does not seem to make sense. What on earth is he up to? The explanation is that he's building quite a different house from the one you thought of, throwing out a new wing here, putting on an extra floor there, running up towers and making courtyards. You thought you were going to be made into a decent little cottage, but he is building a palace. I love that, isn't it? Sometimes we have change come upon us. Sometimes it does feel like it's thrust upon us, and we need to understand what to do with it. But if we can be fluid, be willing and flexible, be moldable, be like clay, and be willing to adapt and respond to the changes that come our way, I believe a lot of good things can happen. And we've got one person here, they've logged in as Niken Live. Once we know what to change, repetition to create the new habit is essential. And that is really, really true, isn't it? And of course, that's been something that's been taught a lot recently. Very critical point, this need for repetition in order to establish the right patterns, the right habits. So, so important. So I think along the way, of course, there is going to be pain that's going to occur as a result of the changes that come our way. But also, I do believe that there is great satisfaction when we can recognize that progress is achieved. It's been said that life is a series of hills and valleys. And interestingly, some of the best growth occurs in the valleys. I love this scene that I've got here. If you're on the video, you can see it. If you can't, you'll have to watch the recording afterwards. This beautiful scene here with a beautiful stream running through a hillside, a valley with the mountains in the background, rocks and streams and beautiful shrubbery and all sorts of different fauna. And it's interesting. Wouldn't it be a shame to remove all of the contrast and just have an empty landscape? I want to share a poem that I memorized when I was a kid. I think I must have been about 17 or 18 when I heard it, but I just loved it, and I committed it to memory. And it says, "My life is but a weaving between the Lord and me. I do not choose the colours, he worketh steadily. Oft times he weaveth sorrow, and I in foolish pride forget he seeth the upper, and I the underside. Not till the looms are silent and the shuttles cease to fly will God unroll the canvas and reveal the reasons why. The dark threads are as needed in the weaver's skillful hand as those of gold and silver, the pattern he has planned." I like that because throughout the course of our lives, we are going to have dark threads and golden threads. We're going to have hills and we're going to have valleys. But essential to progress is our willingness to appreciate them both. And to accept them both, to walk them both, and enjoy them both. And it's not always easy to do, but I do know that change, whilst it may be painful for some, is always, in fact, as painful for most, is always a necessary part of our need to progress and move forward. So what I want to do is share 4 critical steps in order to create change. And as you look at your business, as you look at your life cycle plan, as you look at your current activities, as you look at where your life is now, who you are now, what you want to become, here are 4 things that we need to consider in order to make that change happen. I kind of use this picture as well deliberately. I do love art and how to interpret photography and paintings and pictures and all things. The interpretation is key. I like this picture because it's a picture of a lady here walking forwards. We know she's walking forwards because her back is to us. She's walking in a direction ahead of us. I like that she's barefoot, that the feet are a little dirty, that her feet are planted on the soil. There's something earthy about that, something natural, something organic, which I like. I like that we can see that the sun is either rising or setting, but it's at a time of day that typically reflects meditation, reflectiveness, and perhaps the dawning of a new day. So I want us to consider, as we look forward to the changes that we need to make, that we have the blessing, the good fortune of always having a new day. What is that saying? Weeping may endure for a moment, but joy cometh in the morning. I love that. And I think that's important to consider as we go through some changes in our own personal lives or in our own business plans. So the first step, we need to understand the need for change. I think that's really critical. One of the greatest barriers, in fact, I think the greatest barrier of all for people to move forwards and to create change and to progress is an unwillingness to accept the need to do something different. I look at, just for example, when we introduced some significant changes last year in Nikan, just how many people thought it was ridiculous. We didn't need to make these changes. Yet now, of course, 12 months in, when we see other companies of necessity having to make these changes, of course, it's easier to look back in hindsight and go, yes, very good indeed. Glad we did it. It's really important, isn't it, that we can see the need for change. But the next step, I think, is really important. But let me just kind of share this one little quote in regards to understanding the need for change. An unexamined life is not worth living. Let me say that again. An unexamined life is not worth living. How well do we look into our own lives and examine it? How well do we look closely into the windows of our own soul and investigate and interrogate it? Do we want to look into the shadows? Are we willing to brush out some of those empty rooms, those cobwebbed corners, and do something different? I hope so. Progress and change cannot happen without a willingness for us to examine ourselves. I think that's really important. And listen to this as well. I think this is a critical statement too. The recognition of the need to change has to be greater than the force, has to be a greater force than the luxury of staying the same. The recognition of the need to change has to be a greater force than the luxury of staying the same. That's a powerful and uncomfortable truth, because the reality is staying the same is pretty comfortable, isn't it? It's where our comfort zone resides. Really, really important. I like what Dave has just said here. God demands it, my family deserves it, and the world is starved for it. Quoting there, John O'Leary. Really great quote there, Dave. Secondly, again, like I said, the facts must be authentic. We need to know, I think, first of all, who we are. We talked a little bit last week about our potential and our privilege. And in order to change, I think fundamental to that is recognizing who we really are. And within that lies the framework of what our potential really can become, what we can achieve. And when we can see who we are and see the gap between what we are now, but see the power of what we can become, when we see that gap, I think that motivates the change that's needed. So in order for us to get that fire burning so that we want to change, I think one of the starting points is honestly acknowledging who we are. And that doesn't mean that we need, for a start, I don't think we should beat ourselves up in that process and look at our past. Like I said, we don't need to evaluate ourselves in the context of our past or from the perspective of our present. I think we need to look at it in the potential of who we can become, what we're worth in that context. And then with that in mind, we start to carve our future and put our plans together. So knowing who we are, I think, and where we want to go in life, I believe gives us greater strength to improve. So those facts need to be authentic. The third thing is we need to have a system for change that is established. It was Emerson who said this. He said, a man who sits on the cushion of advantages goes to sleep. When he is pushed, tormented, defeated, he has been put on his wits. He learns moderation and real skill. Our change must be orderly and it must be planned. Our system for change, after it's established, it must be followed through to completion, even though it may disturb our own root system. So I like the fact that there are some established systems that are being put in place here. We have them available in Nikan. We've got these weekly calls. They are focused on so many great principles and skills to improve our business, our heart, our mind, our organizations. We need to tap into these systems, plug into the newsletters, jump on the conference calls, join the programs that are being supported for you, provided for you, so that we can get that change going and start to move forward in a meaningful way. We've got some established systems and programs that Nikan has put in place that I believe are fundamental for us to create lasting change. We talked about them last week. We've got the Summer Sizzle, which is a great way to establish change in our business. We've got the Entrepreneur Club. We've got the Lifestyle Bonus. We've got Team Kaizen. Of course, fundamental to its meaning and definition there is meaningful, positive change. All of these things are in place so that we can build our business, progress, move forward, and enrich our lives and the lives of others. The fourth step, I believe, is as equally as important as the first, and that is we must be totally committed to our plan for change. There's a Chinese proverb that said, "Great souls have wills, feeble souls have only wishes." I like that. Great souls have wills, feeble souls have only wishes. Unless we have the will to improve, all the other steps to change get wasted. So this really becomes quite fundamental, doesn't it? This last step, I believe, separates the winners from the losers. Bruce Barton said that when we're through changing, we're through. I like that. There's no age when we are too old or too young or just too middle-aged to change. Perhaps old age really comes when a person finally gives up the right, challenge and joy of changing. So I think we need to be willing to change on a constant basis. Regardless of our age, regardless of our health, there is always things that we can do to make meaningful change in our lives. Again, Dave said something really good here. You can make massive change if it's about a cause and it's about a mission. And that's really important, isn't it? To find fulfillment in what we're doing helps us to create lasting change. So I want to just finish with a couple of points and excuse the painting that's appeared on the board here. I think this is important as well. This is something that I've really found. One of my favorite proverbs or favorite sayings is, "In patience possess ye your souls." I like that because when I was younger, I was very ambitious, but also very impatient. And I've learned in order to succeed just how critical patience is in the process of success. I've learned that change takes time, and that's okay. Patience, love, and long-suffering, I think, are essential virtues that we need to practice in order to see our success become a reality. I think we all need a little more patience with ourselves. But at the same time, I think we need to establish some milestones. And this is my invitation to you today. And keep in mind, of course, in the conversation of what a core consultant is, remember we've got some clear definitions that establish some good milestones. We've got them in Nikan, haven't we? The quality enrollment behavior, the 500 points, or the 1,000 or 1,500 points, the contacting people every day, doing at least 2 presentations a week, plugging into the systems, getting a part of the calls, all critical. Listen to what Neil Maxwell says here. He says, "Progress is measured by milestones. What many good people lack are markers that might tell them how they're actually doing." And this is one of the hard things, I think, because sometimes we can work really hard, put in a great effort, and even sustain it for a long period of time. But if we don't have the right markers in place, we've got nothing to measure in order to evaluate our performance. And then we can just get tired, worn out, and want to give up. He said goals can become a ritual or a fetish, but in the right measure, they can give us some much-needed reference points. No wonder some seem discouraged. Minus such milestones, we often feel minus in our lives. I hope that we're not feeling minus in our lives, ladies and gentlemen. I hope that as we look at how we're progressing or where we're at right now, be it in Nikan or in our personal lives, that we recognize the need for change. We see the value of progress. We see some things that we can do different, but at the same time, we feel confident and assured that little by little, day by day, we can make a difference in becoming better. What I love about this the patience with progress, which is really what makes it poetry, in my belief, is that our task today is simply to be better than we were yesterday. And if that's our goal, if we can just move forwards one step at a time, one day at a time, and say, today, my goal is to be better than yesterday. But build into that some meaningful milestones that we can work towards. I'm confident we'll start to see progress happen in a way that is fruitful, fulfilling, and very rewarding. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for being with us on the call today. I hope that this has been a help for you. Like I said before, I love our cause of humans being more. I love that we have the chance to reach out to people and make a difference in their lives. I love that we've got a framework with our business that gives us tools to work with that can put change in motion, that can help us to move forwards in a way that is constructive, meaningful, productive, and gives us some great results. Friendships, income, security, peace of mind, time freedom, time with our families, an improved character. All of these great things can be ours as we use the Niken business model to help us move forwards and make a difference with others. Ladies and gentlemen, I love you. So glad to be a part of this great team. Every day I wake up grateful to be a part of this business and to be a part of your lives as we reach out and make a difference to others. Thank you all very much. I look forward to being with you next week, and we'll speak to you again real soon. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye, Ben.
Bye-bye.